Welcome, everyone. I wanted to share with you the seven pathways of the feminine and really the roadmap of how we can restore this feminine lineage within us. First, I want to say that we're really hearing a lot about the feminine and the rise of the feminine. And there's so much that's happening. And for many of us, we're feeling the call, we're hearing the call of the feminine. And so for others that might be new to the feminine and what that means and how to step into that, how to activate that within yourself. One of the things that I think is really important to realize on the feminine path is that it is a path of sovereignty. It is a path where we are, in many ways, remembering this reality that exists within us, that was the living lineage of, not was, but is the living lineage of our ancient ancestral mothers. And in many ways, we're carrying that within ourselves. We're carrying that in our blood. We're carrying that in our psyche, in our soul. And it's very unique to each person how we're initiated, how we deal with challenges, how pretty much she walks you, how the feminine, the mother, the great primordial goddess source, how she walks you is individual for each person. And yet, in the last over a decade, probably about 13 years now, it has been become very clear to me these seven pathways of what I call feminine medicine, these seven pathways that are an aspect of the ancient feminine wisdom, the feminine mysteries that we have forgotten. And so this is what feminine medicine is all about. And so we have to start at the beginning. Uh, well, at least at a beginning point. And that would be that around 5,000 years ago, our ancient ancestral mothers were really known as the medicine women, were the healers, were the actual ones that were the oracles, the divinators, and they carried this message. They were the living embodiment of the feminine, of the mother. And there was no separation. And in many ways, this is what we are now awakening to. And so for 5,000 years, we've been living under a dominant culture that has separated, separated this reality from our awareness, from our consciousness. And for women, we have had to survive from generation to generation. And so it became very unsafe to associate, to awaken, to live that reality of our being. And so we've had to shut it down and we've been in survival mode. And so if you hear a lot of what's going on in terms of, the ascension and the changes and the great change, we hear a lot of the end of the Kali Yuga, which is the end of the time of constriction, the time of destruction. We could say the time of ending of the evil that we see in the world. And it's a time of awakening. And what are we awakening to? We're awakening to the reality that the sacred is right here with us. The reality that the sacred is in every aspect of creation. It is not separate. It is not somewhere else. It is not in the heavens. It is not something separate from us. And in many ways, the split has been a split of the unseen world, of the divine world. We've been split from our ancestral knowledge and relationship. And so ancestral belonging and ancestral relationship. And of course, this is not for all of us, but it's been for most of us in the dominant culture. There's still cultures around the world, indigenous cultures that have maintained this connection with the spirit world and with the other than humans. And so I'm speaking globally of the dominant culture. And so this is the first pathway of feminine of the feminine path of feminine medicine. It's the pathway of restoring our relationship with the ancestors and reestablishing that and awakening to that reality and realizing that everything is alive with the divine essence of the mother embodied through it. Everything has spirit, and all of it is part of our ancestors. It's part of our ancestry. The rocks, the rivers, the oceans, the plants, the trees, the butterflies, and of course our own blood lineage, which in many ways is living within us as well. And this brings us to this idea and understanding that we are living, and all of life and creation also has cycles, right? It's not linear, but it's cyclical. And this idea of the rise and fall of birth and death and yin and yang and moving into these cycles, whether we see it in our earth and the seasons, whether we see it in ourselves, whether we see it in our own emotional circadian rhythm, whether we see it in our cycles, menstrual cycles. So, this idea that we're all part of this matrix of cycles. And this is the second pathway of feminine medicine, which is the earth medicine, connecting, realizing that we also are earth. We are earth and we're divine beings, and we have our divinity and we have our physical humanity, right? We're incarnated in this lifetime right here. So we're physical beings embodying our soul, embodying our essence. And so embodying and understanding or awakening to this reality of the cycles and the medicine of the earth herself as a living matrix, as a living being, and then ourselves as also an aspect of the earth really brings us into a whole different relationship where we can start releasing those veils of separation and of feeling separate, of feeling isolated, of feeling alone, which is part of the indoctrination of our dominant culture. And in these cycles, we also become aware of the lunar cycles, which are very prominent, and we can see how the cycle of the moon reflects our own biological cycle of women and how through the different stages we're activated in particular places within our own being as we move through the lunar cycles. And let me show you a chart of how we come into our lunar pathway and lunar orbit, which we call lunar medicine, and noticing here in this chart how we have the first cycle and we're moving from the dark moon all the way to day 15. So each day, each cycle of the moon, depending on the day of the moon, for example, this is the rising cycle. This is the first half of the cycle until we come to the full moon. And as you can see, it activates each of the gateways and spends about 2 to 3 days on each of the gateways, depending on the gateway, and it's activating us. There's a relationship here with the moon, with ourselves as being. And if we understand the relationship, we're open to the relationship, then we can actually receive the medicine that the moon has to offer and allow ourselves to heal. And so what are we really healing from? That's something that is really important to understand what's happening when we say we're healing, right? So we're evolving, we're always evolving our consciousness, but because of the split that has happened in the last 5,000 years, and we've inherited so much of this conditioning. And for women, it's really been this whole collective trauma around who we are as women, around our value, narratives that we have inherited around the demonization of our species as women in the patriarchy that we live. And so it's really about clearing, releasing, letting all of those narratives, first of all, becoming aware of them consciously, but then secondly, willing to release those and to try to connect with something greater than these ideas of who we are. And so for many of us, we've already been awakening to this reality that our value, for example, as women, is not connected with how we look, or our bodies, that our bodies are this sacred temple. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we come into the last pathway. But releasing these narratives and this, and many times it's also called collective trauma or even personal trauma. But a lot of the personal trauma for women is collective. It's been inherited through our lineage because of the system, that we're living in, and because of the defense mechanisms and behaviors that we've had to adapt. And many times we've also had to shut down our intuitive knowing, our gnosis, our emotional knowing, all the different ways of perceiving. We've had to shut that down in order to stay safe. And maybe not so much for us personally, if we've had the privilege which in many ways that privilege is being taken away very slowly but surely. But definitely for our ancestors that have lived in these last 5,000 years. And so we're awakening out of that, out of those spells, out of those narratives, and we're liberating ourselves. And this is brings us to, I think it's the fourth, the fourth pathway of the shamanic feminine wisdom of how to awaken from that, of how to alchemize, of how to come into greater union with the mother, with the essence, and know that it's not separate from us. And allow that aspect of us to also die, and moving into this death, regeneration, and rebirth theme of the feminine, and realizing that we're going to have these challenges, and as these challenges come up for us, it's an opportunity in many ways to evolve the outdated patterns, beliefs, traumas, pain, wounding that we've been living from. And so this is the generation and what we're being asked to do. And this is part of the awakening of the feminine path. And one of the ways in which I would say the most powerful way of transmuting, of activating that alchemy, is not so much our mental awareness of saying, oh, okay, here's this pattern, here's where I feel unworthy. And so I'm going to look at every time that I feel unworthy and that this comes up. This is great. That's great awareness. But how do we get to that next level where we can actually touch that wound and allow it to transmute, right? Which is what we call a lot healing, quote unquote, transformation. We call it alchemy. And our most powerful tool is sound. And I'm speaking about the sound of our voice. I'm speaking about using our voice for transformation. And interestingly enough, now there's a lot of evidence with our vagus nerve and how sound helps to regulate and activate and come into, vibrational frequency with our vagus nerve, how sound helps to transform trauma, how sound, and not just any sound, but of course, sound through our voice, and of course, yes, sounds of gong and, any kind of sound is powerful many times, depending on their frequency and the harmonization. But our voice is something that we have and that we can use. And activating our voice in many ways to activate our soul, our divine self, right? The places where we've been carrying this forgetting, where we've been carrying this calcification, where we don't remember, where we have believed the narratives, the beliefs, the wounding, the idea of who we are, and we've lived through those narratives. And so as we become aware, awareness is that first principle of feminine healing. And the transformation, the alchemy is that second principle. And the third principle is embodiment. So we're moving through, we become aware, and then we're moving through and allowing the sound. And if there's a way in which we can do sound in the various gateways to activate the seven archetypes of our feminine soul. And that I'm going to share a little bit to show you. These are the qualities of the seven archetypes. And so here again are the seven gateways. And this is a very important part of our blueprint, the seven gateways, and then all of the correlation that there is. And this has been, of course, part of other spiritual systems. The difference is our relationship to it, our relationship to the divine, the mother, the qualities, and then our relationship to ourself and how we are engaging with these gateways. And so here we have the wisdom of the dark mother. It's an aspect of our feminine soul. This is an aspect that we've forgotten. And we have the ability to awaken that within us. And the creatrix here in the sacral gateway, and then the medicine woman, the healer, and the healing that comes from that, our power, our sense of agency that comes with our solar plexus. And then in the heart gateway, the love, the unconditional love. And in our throat gateway, the truth and the expression of our divine self into physical reality, into our physical world, into our thoughts, into our actions. And then we also, of course, have here our ability, the vision, but our ability to be that feminine wisdom keeper, the mystic, the seer, to see not just with our physical eyes, but to see the unseen world and travel between these two worlds. And then, of course, in our crown, we have the ecstatic feminine with the joy, because when we are able to access this aspect of our feminine soul, we can feel that ecstatic bliss that is there. And these qualities are inherent within us. And many times, part of the illusion is that we go outside to feel the love. We go outside of ourselves to hear the wisdom, tuning into others and tuning into what others are giving advice to us. And in many ways, the advice, it's all great because there's a lot of wisdom out there. But ultimately, in the feminine path, this is a path of sovereignty where our responsibility is to tune in and to feel what resonates, what is in alignment with our soul, with our purpose, with what we're here to do, with our next step, and to discern that and to connect and align with our truth. It's part of our fifth gateway, with our truth. Not that our truth is better than someone else's, but that our truth is valid. And we're responsible for ourselves, our well-being, our emotional well-being, and to bring that truth into the world, whatever that may be. And there will be others that resonate and others that don't. And that's okay because everybody has their own flavor of truth. And this is an important quality of understanding, respecting, and allowing and acknowledging the sacredness of each being, regardless of how they're showing up. And so the last aspect is the womb wisdom. This is the last pathway of the feminine path of feminine medicine. And womb wisdom encompasses our ability to, as women, though it's twofold, but as women, our ability to connect with our womb, with our body, and recognize that our womb is the matrix. It's a portal. It's a sacred portal that exists on the physical level, and it connects us directly with the cosmic womb of the mother. And the cosmic womb of the mother is the essence that all is held in, all of creation, all the planets, the universe. And so we can tune into the cosmic womb. We can be nourished by the cosmic womb. And we're also biologically designed to give birth, for most of us, physically, to human beings or to projects and to other things, and to nurture this ability, and to grow and to hold that space through the cycles of death and regeneration and rebirth. And the other aspect of womb medicine is connecting with the ancient wisdom of the energetic wombs, the three wombs: our head womb, our heart womb, our sacral womb, where again, these are portals, and I'll give you a little show that to you. These are portals of where we can also receive wisdom, where we can dissolve the constrictions, the traumas, where the flow has been blocked, where we've shut down in many ways our emotional body. And the emotional body connects with our heart womb. Our lower womb is what we were just speaking of, the sacral womb, energetically, but also physically, where we can connect with the great source womb of the mother, the greatness, the oneness. And of course, our head womb, where we can receive and move out into creative thoughts and beliefs that support our true divine nature, rather than the beliefs and the narratives that we may still be holding about ourselves that are rooted in survival, that are rooted in patriarchal narratives, because that is the culture that we've been steeped in for over 5,000 years. And so as we come to the end of this timeline, of this experience of the patriarchal culture, which will take years, of course, the end of this time, the end of the Kali Yuga, we're awakening. And this is what we're awakening to. And these are some of the ways and pathways that we are, that facilitate this awakening, and that I teach in the feminine path of feminine medicine. And so if this resonates with you, we are going to be doing a 5-week feminine medicine healing arts and rituals, where we're going to touch upon each of these pathways, not just as a concept, but actually bringing in practices, bringing in voice, bringing in sacred drum, bringing in the lunar medicine, the activations. It's a very, very, very full course, 5-week dive that's beginning in October. And this is not just for you to do this just for yourself, but also if you feel called to bringing this out into the world, if you're a healer or a coach or any capacity where you're holding space for other women, for other people in the world. It starts with you. It starts with really understanding and living and embodying these truths, and then allowing yourself to organically transmit these through your being. So it's like purifying, awakening these realities within you so that then you become that anchor on the planet for others. So thank you, and I will link more information below and hope to see you there. Blessings.